I'm Beth Williams, and you're listening to the Art of the Story podcast. Today I'm talking with Jillian Venice and Richard Gorey, the authors of a new supernatural thriller called Ghost Island, available in paperback and as an ebook on Amazon.com. Jillian Venice is an author, screenwriter, and video producer. Her work has appeared on HGTV, VH1, Comedy Central, and PBS. She is also a paranormal consultant who has worked with ghost hunters and lived in 4 haunted houses. She's the co-author of Ghost Island, the novel, and Cassandra's Field Guide to Ghostly Encounters, a companion book that tells you what to do when something goes boo. Richard Gorey is an author, animator, and illustrator who lives in a haunted house and teaches writing for film and animation at the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. He's the author of The Case of the Great Rabbit ripoff, also available on Amazon.com. So let's get started. Tell me, Rich, what is your relationship with Jillian, and what other projects have you two worked on?
Well, I'd met Jillian about maybe 20 years ago at the party of a mutual friend. I was always fascinated and delighted by her, but at first all I knew about Jillian was that she was someone who had been tuned in to the non-physical, somebody who had had experience with what some people call angels or spirits or ghosts. And I loved to hear those stories, and it was only later that I realized that Jillian was a writer as well. She and I got together and had written a few screenplays, kind of Indiana Jones-type thrillers, adventure thrillers, action thrillers, that were very well received by a few people in Hollywood, and they opened some doors for us, which was wonderful and pleasant and a terrific surprise. It was only after a while that Jillian had told me about an idea that she'd had about a young woman in deep trouble in New York who inherits a house off the California coast in Washington. And when she gets there, thinking that it's a wonderful escape from her trouble, she realizes, too late unfortunately, that the house is an energy center, and the cliff on which it stands is a place that's drawn all of these evil forces from around the planet and intensified them. And as time goes by, this young woman, whose name is Caitlin, realizes she's not just being haunted, but is in terrible danger. It was a terrific idea, and Jillian had most of it kind of conceptualized and written in her head at the time, and I agreed to come on board. So Ghost Island was maybe the 3rd or the 4th project that I think we'd worked on together.
Wonderful. And you have anything to add to that, Jillian?
Well, I wanted to work with Rich because he's probably one of the top 5 funniest people on the planet, at least in North America. And we hit it off the moment we met. And I knew if anyone could help me struggle through my first screenplay, it would be Rich. And he was fortunately happy to do so, and we had a lot of fun in the process.
Let's get to the obvious question. Do you believe in ghosts, Jillian?
Yep. I have been, I'd say, interacting with ghosts and energies since I was a child. The non-physical world is probably as normal to me as the physical world is normal to you.
So, Rich, how about you? Do you believe in ghosts?
Well, I've always had experiences that have been difficult to explain, and as you said in your introduction, I've lived in a house where there's been several bizarre incidents that other people have had more of an intense experience with than I. But both of my parents died younger than they should have. My mother was only 34 when she died, and so that idea that you might be connected to the people that are no longer here, there's something about it that's very appealing to me. There have been a lot of people who have come and gone in my life earlier than they should, and I think that has triggered in me a desire to want to know what's on the other side. And so, yes, I want very badly to believe in that world, and in my own life, I've had several experiences that have given me hope and encouragement that there is more than we know.
Why are you so interested in ghosts? Is it because of your parents, would you say?
It's partly that, and it's partly because when I was a child, I was deeply affected by horror movies and scary stories, and I think the things that touch us and frighten us as children stay with us as adults. I think one of the reasons why I love scary stories is because of the safety of being able to be frightened and then step away from that into what you believe is the safety of your life. So there is this connection that I'd love to have to my parents and to all of the people and animals that have crossed over. But there's another part of me that just loves to be frightened.
Oh, okay. And how about you, Jillian?
Well, I think that's true. People do love to be frightened, even if they won't admit it. And the reason why, I think, is because it makes their heart race. It makes their breathing, that much rougher and faster. It gives you a sense of being alive, really alive, when you're scared. And I think that's part of why, we like haunted house stories, scary stories of all kinds. When I was young, my mom would have me stay up late and watch scary movies with her. And she introduced me to those wonderful Universal Studios pictures like Frankenstein and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein and Dracula. And I developed a love for the genre at a very early age. I guess I've just loved it ever since. I have had some experiences with what I think of as angelic beings or guardian angels. When I had the first one at the age of 9 and learned that, you know, they were there, they were around me, they kept me from dying, it made me think, you know, there's something to this. There is a non-physical component to life on Earth, you know, and why shouldn't it be just as rich and compelling and important as the physical world that we see every day?
And so do you think that's why you're so interested in ghosts, because of your childhood experiences with them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. To me, ghosts are people too, you know, and sometimes you can actually learn their stories and what, you know, motivates them to hang out in a place. And I've worked as a paranormal investigator and consulted with different paranormal groups in the Denver area, and learned the stories of spirits that seemed, you know, kind of connected to a particular home or a building. And often those stories were, you know, they were afraid to move on. They didn't know what lied ahead of them. And so instead of jumping into the afterlife, as most people do, they kind of got stuck. And so there they were. And sometimes all you need to do is tell a spirit where they are, what year it is, and that there's more that awaits them if they jump into the afterlife. And then they'll get invited by their angels.
So what is it do you want people to understand about ghosts? What is it you want people to understand?
Well, I want people to understand, and not just about ghosts, but non-physical beings in general, that they are around us and that your life is much richer if you interact with them as opposed to fearing them or, you know, shying away from them and saying things like, I don't believe in ghosts. You know, once you have a ghostly experience, believe me, you will believe in ghosts.
Right.
And non-physical beings of all kinds.
Yeah.
So I just want to broaden people's minds and help them understand a little bit about them and not be afraid of them.
Why did you write Ghost Island then?
I love haunted house stories. Probably because I've lived in 4 haunted houses. And it's a fascinating experience when a spirit or another kind of non-physical being realizes that you can sense their presence, then they start to play with you. And I remember when I was a teenager growing up, we lived in a house that had a pool table. And when I would walk into the room, I'd hear one of the pool balls hit another one. And that was their way of saying, hi, glad you're here.
When you were writing the book, how did you avoid some of the cliches of the genre?
Rich, do you want to take that one?
Sure. One of the things that triggered the writing of the book was Jalen's experiences. Now, I've always been a fan of horror, and I've always been an efficient writer. I've worked in public relations for 20 years, and so you had to turn around things quickly and deliver something that worked and served the purpose. And so if someone had asked me on my own to write a haunted house thriller, I would have defaulted to the cliches and probably managed them well. But Jalen started talking to me about some of the experiences that she'd had, and she said, you know, I'd love to see this in a book form. And I said, well, what I can maybe bring to this process is structure, and what you can bring to it is truth. As much as I believe in ghosts and wish I could encounter them, Jalen has a history and an experience that gave that book truth. And so that process was more about she and I sitting and having a Grand Marnier and talking about her experiences and saying, in what way would this serve the book? In what chapter might this show up? And we would bounce ideas off of each other. And then the idea of the big question to answer, Beth, is this: why, when someone realizes the house they're in is haunted, why don't they leave? And Jalen and I answered that question by throwing our characters into such turmoil and despair that the haunted house that they move into is almost an escape from the horror of their physical lives.
So what can people expect from Ghost Island?
Well, they're going to get some scares for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like. Yeah.
They're going to get some great characters that they want to be around, that they want to, enjoy and travel through this experience of a haunted house. And as Rich said, their lives were so dire and horrible before they inherited the house, the haunted house, that they can't even imagine leaving this place once they find themselves in it. And then from that point on, it's like, well, there are ghosts here. Yeah, things are happening to us, and it's scary as hell. And then it's like, well, what do we have to do to stop all of this crazy, chaotic, haunting that's going on here? And they come to understand that there is this thing called karma. And the ghosts that are in their home were attracted there by an ancestor of theirs, and forced to work for him, in a matter of speaking. And they're tied to the house. They can't leave. They need somebody to release them. And that's where the psychic and the paranormal investigator come in.
There are a lot of other ghost stories out there. What's different about your ghost story?
I think that what's different is that Jalin's structure for the story was that it isn't merely that there's a series of scares that elevate to a climax. What Jalin wanted was to write a story about an energy point on the planet that draws both good and bad forces to it. And all of the people, alive and dead, who are drawn to this house called Ghost Point, they all have something to share and something to learn and some journey to go on that their spirit's journey will not be complete without. And so why is it different? I think there's an emotional core to it. There's a complexity to the way in which these characters come together. And there's an inevitability. This isn't a random thing that these people somehow wind up in deep trouble. I believe in the way that Jalin wanted this book to come together. These people are called to this house to heal a centuries-old evil. And unless they suffer, they can't heal it. And I think that that's what makes it fascinating to me.
Yeah, I love the way Rich puts that, because he's right on with that. The other thing about it is that it's based on metaphysics, spiritual laws, and real ghostly encounters that I have had, or people I know have shared with me. So you can actually say it's based on real life events that are pulled together into this story that's fascinating, it's fun, it's scary at just the right moments, and you develop a broader understanding of what might cause a haunting in a home or a building, and what to do when you discover that.
So, do you think there will be a sequel?
Yeah, I think so. What about you, Rich?
Oh, I agree. And I think one of the things that makes Jalin such a kind of a fun partner to write with is that her invention of this character of Cassandra, who is the ghost hunter that's kind of lived on the island all of her life, but has been always too terrified to face what's going on in the house. And Jalin and I both discussed that although there is a definite ending to the story in the novel for those people who might feel as if, I don't want to feel as if I'm taken on a journey that doesn't have a climax, we have characters who are so deeply transformed by what happens to them that I would like to think that people would like to see what happens to Caitlin, the young woman who inherits the house, but mostly to Cassandra, the woman who helps her heal the evil in the house. I think that there's a series, actually, in this woman and her adventures down the line. So I would love to see a sequel, or maybe several sequels to Ghost Island, and I think that that is something that is definitely on my radar.
Yeah, and there might even be a television series. Rich and I have been discussing that and what it would look like, and we've even plotted out a few different episodes of a television series. Netflix, did you hear that? I think we'd like to talk to you in the near future.
That sounds so exciting, and I want to wish you both the very best. Thanks for being on the podcast today, Rich and Jalin. And listeners, you can buy Ghost Island on Amazon.com. And if you hurry, you can get a free download of Cassandra's Field Guide in Ghostly Encounters. That's like getting 2 books for the price of 1. What are you waiting for? I'm Beth Williams, and thanks for listening to The Art of the Story.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks very much, Beth.